Dave, appreciate you showing up this late at night, but I'll make it really quick. You mentioned in Rachel Wolfson's interview, I thought it was pretty interesting that uh, this whole concept of OFAC compliance, right, and sanctions. I've always kind of thought that when Ethereum switched over, merged over to proof of stake, there were more articles popping up saying that it was 50% OFAC compliant and 70%. You have mentioned lightly in the interview. Just wanted to know, uh, without giving too much, what's the progress on that OFAC compliance? Is it mainly a couple things, or if you can expand on that?
Yeah, so I think so. Ripple has been talking a lot about You may have heard the phrase institutional DeFi, or and to some extent some overlap with sort of like Web3 or enterprise Web3. The issue there is we don't mean like IBM using Sushi Swap. That's not what we mean by that. What we mean is products that are DeFi products, but that are built with the support that enterprises need. And I do believe that the number one blocker preventing enterprise adoption of DeFi, I mean, in the United States, there's all kinds of blockers, but I mean, globally, the number one blocker is sanction screening because companies, if you finance terrorists, it's strict liability. It doesn't matter if you knew or like if there's a business that you might accidentally wind up funding terrorists, you're just not allowed to do it. You're like literally not allowed to do anything that might wind up like taking money or giving money to terrorists. And the liability is enormous. You're talking about, hundreds of millions of dollars of liability in many cases. I mean, it's enormous. So there has to be a solution. And so what we've been looking at is ways to not break public ledgers, but add support for things like sanction screening. Now, currently, of course, the XRP ledger doesn't have support for this, nor does really any other public ledger that I know of. Um, we have a proposal called the decentralized ID proposal, which is not a solution to sanction screening, but it is a step in that direction. And what my thinking is, and I think most of the company, I'm kind of taking a leadership position in the company here, so I think like the company's thinking follows mine. And what I'm thinking is the XRP ledger should not enforce sanction screening. It shouldn't be a sanction screened ledger because that doesn't make sense because people who use the ledger are subject to different regulations. So it shouldn't sort of enforce one regulatory regime on all users. That doesn't make sense for a public ledger. But what it should do is it should allow people to comply with laws that apply to them. So if you want to get US style sanction screening on your account, there should be some way for the ledger to do that for you. The problem is that's going to mean that you can't interact with accounts that aren't screened in some way. And where things get interesting is so you divide this, the ledger into sort of green and red, and green are people who are sanction screened, and red are people who might be, might be terrorists, but also might just be people who, for whatever reason, are not interested in participating in the sanction screening. And the problem is if the rule is that no money can move from red to green through any path, there's no point in the red and green being on the same ledger. Like if they literally cannot interact with each other at all, you've just split your ledger in two. And so the trick is figuring out in what ways can things flow across those boundaries. And if we can come up with like a solution that makes sense for that, then I think that's like the secret to unlocking institutional DeFi, and look for some stuff from us on that.
Appreciate it.
Camel,
Thanks, Dave.
Camel, you had your hand up?
Yeah, please. Welcome, David. I got a question regarding a digital currency based on my country, Saudi Arabia. I have heard there is a currency or digital currency. It's called Aber. It's has been created by the Saudi Central Bank and the Emirati or UAE Central Bank. Does that digital currency, it's for cross-border transactions actually between Saudi Arabia and Emirates, but does Ripple have anything to do with Aber digital currency? Thanks.
So no, we've been talking to Saudi Arabia about a sort of SWIFT competitor, so that the United States and Europe don't have sort of veto power over or monitoring authority over internal transactions, between Saudi Arabia and the rest of the region. We haven't made much progress on that. They're interested, and we're continuing to talk. We're continuing to talk to them, but we're not involved in anything that they're doing right now. Although there was one project. I don't remember if it was that. I'd have to. You know what? Look it
I
up
think
right now.
Sab Bank.
There was something. Yeah. So there was a deal. Yeah, there was a deal in 2018 between the Saudi Arabian Monetary Authority and Ripple, but I don't remember the details. But I will tell you a great story from my last time in Saudi Arabia.